Welcome to Living with Parkinson's 2020, our very first virtual symposium. I'm Rona Rosenbaum, president of the Maryland Association for Parkinson Support, which we call MAPS for short. We're delighted that COVID hasn't stopped us from presenting an interesting and informative program. We've worked hard to make this go smoothly, but as we all know, the best laid plans of mice and men and women and computers. So please bear with us and enjoy.
Hello, and welcome to Living with Parkinson's 2020. I'm Judy Friedman, the Vice President and Executive Director of MAPS. Well, this has certainly been a very strange year, and that's putting it mildly. We've learned a lot of new things, and the most important of them has been how to Zoom. 9 months ago, who of us even knew what Zooming was? And since then, we've all learned a lot. This is our very first Zoom event, as Rona just told you, and the process is still new to most of us. So if there are a few glitches, please bear with us. We think that we've got it all ironed out, but you never know. However, we have lots of wonderful volunteers standing by and on call, just waiting to help if there are any problems with accessing the events today. And remember that the content of this symposium will be available free of charge for 3 months after the event is over. The committee, Rona and I, have worked very hard to bring you some interesting and perhaps some new information. And now here is Nikki Barr, the Center Director of Meyerberg Center, to go over some important housekeeping details. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. And thank you for coming.
Welcome to our Living with Parkinson's Symposium. I want to first remind everyone of a few tech tips to enjoy the best experience during today's events. Please make sure you have printed or written down the following web address: www.meyerberg.org/LWP2020. You can also find this web address in the chat. At the end of each session, the host will end the Zoom meeting and participants will need to return to this website to access the next session. It's very important that you have this address readily available during today's events. For the duration of the event, all participants' microphones will be muted and videos turned off. During the Q&A, you will enter your questions in the chat. If you'd like to submit questions after the event, please send an email to info@marylandparkinsonsupport.org and include the name of the speaker, your name, contact information, and your question. Make sure the volume on your device is turned all the way up. If your session freezes, don't panic. Simply leave the session, return to www.meyerberg.org/LWP2020 and click Join Session. For best streaming quality, watch the event from a location closest to your cable modem and router. If you run into any issues during today's event, please call our hotline at 855-462-7773. And finally, a quick reminder that all of today's events will be recorded. The links to the recordings will be emailed to participants within 7 to 10 business days of today's event. And now it's time to get started with our keynote speaker. Dr. Ariane Kameda graduated from Eastern Virginia Medical School in Norfolk, Virginia in 1992. She completed her residency training in family medicine at Maine Medical Center in Portland, Maine. Dr. Kameda then entered private practice and began to blend her training in complementary and conventional medicine. In 1999, Dr. Kameda established the Kameda Wellness Center and eventually Your Holistic Doc LLC, a personalized, integrative, holistic medicine practice. Dr. Kameda has over 28 years of medical experience and structures each patient's natural medical program to meet their individual needs to create a very personalized wellness program. Please welcome Dr. Ariane Kameda.
Parkinson's disease and integrative medicine, where we are blending conventional and natural medicine to create wellness. The definition that I would consider accurate for what integrative medicine is it integrates traditional Western medical practices with what is sometimes considered alternative or holistic medicine, creating a focus on prevention through nutrition, diet, and lifestyle changes. We will prescribe a combination of drugs when needed with botanical medicines, which is another way of saying herbal medicine, supplements, which is another way of saying vitamins and minerals, therapeutic diets, sometimes detoxification programs, and stress management techniques. Each patient that visits an integrative medicine doctor will receive a very personalized program to optimize their ultimate health. So going on to Parkinson's and integrative medicine, just to define what the pathophysiology of Parkinson's disease is. I know that everyone in the audience is very familiar with this, but I just want to remind everybody that it's a progressive neurodegenerative disorder that affects nerve cells predominantly in the substantia nigra of the brain, which is responsible for the production of a neurotransmitter, which is called dopamine. Trying to abbreviate some of the motor symptoms that are associated with Parkinson's disease, because I realize many people are very familiar with it. I just want to highlight the most common motor symptoms, which are a resting tremor. Sometimes one of the first resting tremors is the pill rolling tremor of the hands. There's a shuffling gait, often with a compensatory increase in cadence, which can lead to falls. There's problems with balance as well as postural control, which can mean the whole trunk of the person falls forward, again, increasing fall risk. And then there's freezing, which is described as a difficulty actually initiating as well as stopping a gait. There's a lot of tension in the muscles with muscle rigidity and stiffness, which is called muscle hypertonicity, again, directly related to the dopamine deficiency. Often we'll see speech changes, either monotone voice or soft speaking with loss of inflection of the voice. Changes in the handwriting, which will be accompanied often by small writing, which is very hard to read and is actually hard to initiate. And then there's something called difficulty with unconscious movements, things such as blinking, which can sometimes cause what we call the characteristic Parkinson's stare or faces, where the eyes are not able to blink. And in that category also includes this inability to swing the arms when the person is moving. Some of the more unrecognized symptoms of Parkinson's, which are becoming more apparent as we go through the evolution of understanding Parkinson's disease, are the non-motor symptoms. These can be even more debilitating in some people. Fatigue can be debilitating. Low blood pressure can occur, making people feel very lightheaded. People can have problems controlling their bladder and their bowels. They can have restless legs, particularly when they're trying to sleep at night, or have other sleep disturbances. There's difficulty with swallowing. Sometimes people have a hard time managing their saliva, which causes drooling, and both can interfere with the ability to eat correctly. There can be problems with memory. And these memory problems can be very anxiety-provoking. They can be saddening and cause depression, and eventually might even cause things as severe as hallucinations and delusions, as well as full-blown dementia, known as the dementia of Parkinson's. Very different from Alzheimer's. So while we all know that medications are available for Parkinson's, I think it's very important to realize that the Parkinson's medications that help the patient do not actually treat the underlying disease itself, but are helping the person who's afflicted with Parkinson's to temporarily have more dopamine in their brain, and as a result, temporarily, meaning until the drug wears off, have a less symptomology. So what does the integrative medicine doctor do when it comes to Parkinson's disease? How do we approach it? Well, by creating a personalized program for each patient, we're really focusing on the whole person, and the integrative medicine doctor, who remains updated, which is very important, and current on medical literature concerning all the pathophysiology of any disease, is able to safely and effectively augment our conventional medical training with what we use from our field of research to address the root cause of disease by utilizing the addition of natural resources we've spent years researching for our patient population. One of the most profound understandings we have in the medical literature on all levels is the understanding of mitochondria and Parkinson's disease. We now understand that this is one of the pivotal mechanisms by which Parkinson's disease manifests with a compromise of energy production on what's called the mitochondrial level, which I'll describe in a moment. It ultimately manifests as various problems throughout the body, not just in the brain, but with this understanding, specifically targeting mitochondrial function makes the most sense as a way of understanding the fundamental and underlying or root cause abnormality that we see in Parkinson's disease. What is the mitochondria? Well, the mitochondria are bean-shaped organelles. They float freely inside almost every one of your 37 trillion cells. Red blood cells are the one cell we know did not have mitochondria. They're tiny power plants, and they combine the food that we eat with the oxygen we breathe to turn that into the fuel that our cells use to basically keep us going and to survive, to live. So in 2015, a Harvard Medical School study came out through the National Institute of Health showing that there was indeed a connection between mitochondria, the cell's powerhouse. And when they were sick and damaged in this study, the body was unable to clear them away efficiently enough. And what they discovered was that these damaged mitochondria were connected to the Parkinson's disease that they were studying. In healthy cells, damaged mitochondria are broken down and they're disposed of, and it is this mitochondrial quality control pathway that is so critical to neurodegenerative disease beyond Parkinson's, and as a result is in some part resulting in bad mitochondria accumulating in neurons. Neurons in this case are the substantia nigra producing dopamine. So what is it that's being accumulated? What's being produced and not eliminated? These are called reactive oxygen species, and they cause mitochondrial damage. They're a type of unstable molecule that, because they have been connected to oxygen, have oxygen connected to them, and it's a natural byproduct of what we have as our normal metabolism of oxygen in our body. But when these levels increase because they're not being eliminated correctly, it causes something called oxidative stress. Many of you in the audience have probably heard of free radicals. Reactive oxygen species are free radicals. They're normally produced in the mitochondria, as I mentioned, and they're produced while we're making ATP, which are our powerhouses and responsible for all of the energy the body needs to survive. The mitochondria alone is responsible for over 90% of the reactive oxygen species that we see in our body. Oxidative stress leads to damage of the DNA of the cell and to cell death. How is this connected to Parkinson's disease? Oxidative stress and the dopamine-producing cells that are damaged in Parkinson's disease. Well, antioxidants, which we'll describe in a few moments, are normally abundant in the cell and scavenge all of these excessive reactive oxygen species of free radicals, and they lower that level of oxidative stress. But if there's a failure, for whatever reason, of these antioxidants in regulating our reactive oxygen species in the brain, it leads to oxidative stress and cell death of the cells. And in the case of Parkinson's, it's very specific for the substantia nigra that produce dopamine and can result in the disease. So going back to that Harvard study in 2015, remember, this study clearly defined that damaged mitochondria were connected to Parkinson's disease, and the fact that healthy cells normally remove this damaged mitochondria seems to be impacted somehow, so that we have a neurodegenerative process that can possibly ensue because of the buildup of reactive oxygen species. So it's a direct link between what the research was in 015 and our current awareness of oxidative stress. So oxidative stress in the mitochondria results in dopaminergic cell damage in Parkinson's, and we now know this connection between oxidative stress and the reduction in antioxidant production in the mitochondria of the substantia nigra is afflicting patients with Parkinson's disease. So the goal would be, on some level, to reduce this oxidative stress. Reducing inflammation in the brain is very important when we're trying to halt the death of these dopamine-containing neurons. Inflammation of the brain is caused by this oxidation. The oxidative stress causes inflammation in the brain, and it's due to the cell death of the mitochondria in the substantia nigra. Parkinson's disease and the breakdown of mitochondria by inflammation in the brain is what really ultimately is, at least in large part, causing a reduced dopamine production. This inflammation process, again, is called oxidation. When you look at these two PET scans, you can see clearly that the normal brain has a lot more what looks like red in its brain. Well, these are the areas of the brain that are responsible for creating dopamine. This is a part of the substantia nigra. So what would a possible solution be when it comes to integrative medicine? We like to use antioxidants, among other things, to slow Parkinson's progression. And for that matter, hopefully to prevent it from happening at all. To reduce this inflammation in the brain that causes Parkinson's disease, we want to increase the production of important molecules in our body that impart antioxidant activity to protect the brain from oxidative inflammation. And this can all be taking place at the same time you're taking medications that increase your dopamine levels, such as your cinnamon. What are antioxidants? Just to name a few, what I wanted to do was give everybody an example of some of the things that people have heard about regarding supplements and where some of those things can be obtained in their diet. So basically, antioxidants are natural compounds that are found in some foods that help neutralize these free radicals and oxidation in the body. To give a few examples here, we have resveratrol, abundant in grapes, blueberries, strawberries, blackberries, acai berries, and also found in red wine. We also have carotenoids. Carotenoids, many people are familiar with carotenoids when it comes to eye health. Well, the eye is a part of the brain. Carotenoids contain something called astaxanthine as well as lycopene. And these are all in the vitamin A family and abundant in tomatoes, among other red vegetables. Coenzyme Q, many people have heard about coenzyme Q. Well, it's a very powerful antioxidant, but it does that specifically through reducing the oxidation of fat that is turning into oxidized fat or lipid oxidation in our body. We can get coenzyme Q from fish, many of the oils that come from seeds, as well as spinach. Very easily absorbed during a high-fat meal, and it's particularly effective when it's consumed with vitamin B and C containing foods or supplements. Vitamin E is another very powerful antioxidant. As far as a food group, it's found predominantly one of the most abundant resources is wheat germ. Everybody will be happy to know that dark chocolate is a very good antioxidant because it contains the antioxidant cocoa, which is different from cacao. Going on to cruciferous vegetables, many people have heard of these as well. This is a very, very large group of vegetables. You know that broccoli and broccoli sprouts are cruciferous vegetables, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, green and red cabbage. The green leafy vegetables that are in the brassica family are things like collard greens, mustard greens, kale, bok choy, Swiss chard, and watercress. Having salads that are abundant in these on a daily basis are going to do nothing but support your antioxidant protection. The artichokes are also very useful, particularly in their whole plant form. And then vitamin C, which is the most powerful antioxidant we have in our body. And unfortunately, our body cannot make it. So we must consume it. Because we can't basically make it, we have to consume it through fruits and vegetables and leafy greens, unless we also decide to take it as a supplement. So let's talk a little bit about what causes oxidation in the body. There are a lot of theories about what causes oxidation in the Parkinson's patient, particularly when it comes to things like environmental toxins and herbicides. But I do want to mention that there's a disease process that's very well known at this point to cause oxidative stress, and it is the oxidative stress imparted by diabetes that is very highly correlated with the potential for Parkinson's. It's basically got a pivotal role in oxidative stress, it's a pivotal role in the development of any diabetic complications, whether it be vascular or neurological, cardiac, and the metabolic abnormalities that we see with diabetes impart their stress as well on the mitochondria with an overproduction of reactive oxygen species, again, also known as free radicals. And what we have found is that diabetes and Parkinson's disease are highly correlated. Whether it be the most recent studies or the studies from 10 years ago, we have an abundant number of studies showing that there is an impact of diabetes on the clinical presentation as well as progression through the inflammation it causes in the brain, the mitochondrial dysfunction, and all of this is, of course, related to the oxidative stress we've been talking about. Specifically because hyperglycemia, or a high blood sugar level, will cause insulin resistance, which together causes a lot of free radicals and reactive oxygen species, which, when in the case of diabetes, can have a negative effect on Parkinson's. Take-home message here, manage diabetes, and you'll reduce your risk of Parkinson's progression, at least at the rate it might be going. These are just two of the studies that I'm showing, one as recent as 2020, showing that many studies are, basically this was a composite meta-analysis showing that many studies reveal that diabetes increases the risk of Parkinson's disease. And what that means is onset of Parkinson's disease. In 2018, there was a report that showed that there was an increased risk rate of subsequent Parkinson's disease, again, in a large cohort study where we saw type 2 diabetics more likely to develop Parkinson's. When we go through the next few slides, it's important to remember that everything we talk about regarding reducing oxidative stress will also reduce the harmful effects that diabetes has on the brain through oxidation. So let's start with one of the premises that so many people have heard about, and that is the Mediterranean diet. In addition to decades now of research that shows that the Mediterranean diet can have a positive impact on heart health, blood sugar levels, and even weight management, there are now many studies suggesting that eating the Mediterranean diet can reduce your risk of neurodegenerative disease, from Alzheimer's to Parkinson's to multiple sclerosis and more. The Mediterranean diet in a nutshell, just think lots of vegetables, fish, and lots of healthy nuts. High intake of vegetables, legumes, and beans, low glycemic index fruits, a very large intake on a regular basis, if possible, of things like olive oil, avocado oil, coconut oil. These are called monounsaturated fatty acids. In and of itself, another whole entity that helps with imparting safety from neurodegenerative disease progression. A low or moderate intake of healthy dairy, meat, and poultry, preferably grass-fed, and then a low intake to no intake, if I had it my way, of anything that's processed. Processed carbohydrates usually come in boxes, bags, jars, obviously anything that's going to be fast food. You want to really try and just eliminate these from your diet. And believe it or not, a low to moderate consumption of wine, particularly red wine, imparts safety when it comes to oxidative stress through the Mediterranean diet. So hopefully this is all good news. And those of you who like to drink olive oil like I do might enjoy the fact that you can have as much olive oil as you want and you will do nothing but reduce your risk of inflammation, oxidative stress. One recent study cited here, although there's many more, as well as a study in 2005, showing basically that the intake of total monounsaturated fatty acids were significantly associated with a lower risk of Parkinson's disease. So let's talk a little bit more about food specifically rather than diet. What do we mean when we say the power of antioxidant foods and supplements? One of my favorite supplements to recommend someone consider taking, no matter who they are, is glutathione. Unfortunately, glutathione really is not available in your diet. You can make it in your own body through the consumption of another amino acid, but it is very important to consider that its level is reduced as we age, and it's a major mitochondrial antioxidant that protects the mitochondrial DNA against that oxidative damage we were talking about. It also regulates the production of detoxification enzymes. Remember, we're trying to not let those reactive oxygen species accumulate in the cell. So by reducing their ability to stick around and clearing them out, glutathione both acts as an antioxidant as well as a clearance system. And we do know that glutathione levels decrease with the normal aging process, which of course we all go through. But in Parkinson's disease, we actually see the glutathione levels are lower in the brain, specifically in the substantia nigra, which is the area that the brain produces dopamine, and it's the area that we see the most loss in relationship to Parkinson's. And this level of reduction that we see is directly associated with the onset of, or with the progression of Parkinson's. In other words, the less glutathione in that person's brain, the more advanced their Parkinson's disease seems to be presenting. And I did quote one study here, which one of many, showing that the role of oxidative stress in Parkinson's is basically highlighted by the observation that glutathione is significantly lower by 40% in the substantia nigra of Parkinson's disease patients. The problem with glutathione is it's very hard to get a glutathione preparation that's bioavailable. It normally breaks down in your stomach and becomes completely inert and is never able to get into your bloodstream, much less up into your brain. So I like to recommend a bioavailable oral glutathione that was recommended by one of my mentors in the late 80s, Dr. Perlmutter. And he suggested, and this is the product I use to this day, a nanoliposomal, which means the glutathione is attached to something that has a lipid or a fat on it, which potentiates its drug delivery into the brain. And because it's known to be unstable in any other form, it's really the only way to take it orally. You can also use it intranasally, and you can get an IV of glutathione. Both of these are basically unavailable without a local doctor who does IV glutathione or without a prescription for nasal glutathione. This specific glutathione that I use, I do have to receive from a compounding pharmacy. It's not available to the layman online. So this essential breakthrough product is literally something I've used for about 15 years, and it does get you a substantial amount of glutathione, almost 500 milligrams per ounce. Fair warning, because of the fact that glutathione has a high sulfur content, it has a very strong taste and a very strong odor, and it does smell a little bit like rotten eggs, but it doesn't taste that bad. So let's talk about foods. What about broccoli? Everybody seems to be aware of how good broccoli is. Why is broccoli so good for us? Well, broccoli and its sprout is the most bioavailable form of antioxidant protection in the cruciferous family. It contains something called, well, they all contain something called glucoraphanin, and glucoraphanin has something called sulforaphanes in it. And what these do is they actually upregulate, allow your own antioxidant production to occur in your body while upregulating your ability to detoxify. So they're literally sort of leading the show when it comes to being a very high concentration antioxidant support system. Other foods that are very high in antioxidant substances are all the other cruciferous vegetables. Cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, green and red cabbage, the green leafy brassicas such as collard greens, mustard greens, all the ones I had mentioned earlier. And then there's something called resveratrol. Resveratrol has something in it that is very bioactive called a pterostilbene. And pterostilbenes are very, very powerful when it comes to creating detoxification and antioxidation. They can be found particularly in the skin of grapes, but they're also found in the wine of grapes and grape juice. They're found in peanuts and peanut butter, dark chocolate, and all of the berries. The blueberries have the highest content, particularly because of the fact that that blue color to the blueberry carries the most highest content of the resveratrol. If you can think blue, dark red vegetables and fruit, you will be literally looking at the highest antioxidant content. Turmeric, many people have called it turmeric. Curcumin, maybe people call it curcumin, but basically turmeric contains curcumin, which has a vast array of inflammation reduction power, and it is one of the most powerful antioxidants that we could use for our entire body, and it does a great job clearing free radicals. Green tea, also very popular, clearance of free radicals, very powerful antioxidant. Just a couple more here that some of you might have heard of. Coenzyme Q, also known as ubiquinone or ubiquinol. Basically a very important supplement that is available in small quantity in certain foods, but it is the support system for your mitochondria when it comes to the generation of what the mitochondria does. It's one of the reasons that people have brain problems when they're on statins, because coenzyme Q is killed by statins. And coenzyme Q protects our cells, it protects our membranes, and it's very important when it comes to reducing oxidation. Acetyl L-carnitine has many different neuroprotective roles. It crosses the blood-brain barrier, and it is acetyl L-carnitine, not just L-carnitine, but acetyl L-carnitine, because that acetyl content moiety of the L-carnitine is what's required to cross the blood-brain barrier. And it's very good when it comes to reducing toxic stress effects as well as anything that has to do with stress-induced damage, i.e. diabetes, etc. So moving on to some of the two other products that I like to review is N-acetylcysteine. When you think about N-acetylcysteine, think about, people sometimes remember it as NAC. NAC turns into glutathione, and NAC and alpha lipoic acid make glutathione in our body. So I need to say, you don't need to see much more about it. Obviously, if it's producing glutathione in your body, it's a good thing. And it also, alpha lipoic acid also recirculates your antioxidants like glutathione, vitamin E, and vitamin C. So I think it's really important that everybody know that all supplements are not the same. When I started my practice here in Baltimore in 1998, there was no Whole Foods, there was no Amazon, there was really nothing other than maybe a GNC here and there. So I had to start really creating a pharmacy for my patients because I knew that I needed to use quality supplements. And with the vast array of supplements available, it's really important to know quality supplements, which I think is overwhelming for myself when I just go look at the shelves that people are looking at. So all the supplement formulas that I recommend have been selected for their synergistic power, meaning the way that those formulas are working together with all the constituents together in one pill or ounce or teaspoon, as well as a high quality assurance, which is going to boost their effectiveness as well as their safety. To name a few of these, I have used two supplements in particular in addition to that liposomal glutathione. The natural brain support supplementation that I use in all of my Parkinson's cases will have all of the things that we talked about in nature that you can get from your foods. It's just a matter of how much you really want to do in addition to your diet. So again, regulating the production as well as the upregulation of powerful antioxidants and clearing things from the body that can have toxic effects and not allow things like the dopamine producing cells of the substantia nigra to continue to exist. This would be turmeric, green tea, and pterostilbene, which is that high potency resveratrol. Remember, you get that from your grapes and your grape skin. And then the glucoraphanin, which is from your broccoli. In addition, I use something called Brain Sustain. This is the capsule form. You can also use it in the powder form. A lot of my patients will use it as a morning smoothie, as basically a backbone for whatever they put in their smoothie in the morning with all those antioxidant vegetables and fruits they can add. And it provides this whole array of all the different things we've just been discussing that will provide both the micronutrients as well as the antioxidants to support the structure and metabolic power of your brain and your nervous system. Basically a foundation supplement. So going down to the wire here, if we wanted to create a quick review of the pathophysiology and things that you might not ever hear about from your doctor, I think all of your doctors will tell you that the Parkinson's disease is caused by the dopamine production neurons being destroyed in the substantia nigra. I think they will also admit to you that the symptoms of Parkinson's is what they're just basically treating with their drugs, and that you are very grateful for having those medications so that you can function. But one thing it's important to remember is this oxidative stress, that the dopaminergic neurons are literally being destroyed as a result of free radicals or reactive oxygen species production and their accumulation in a very specific part of the brain called the substantia nigra within the mitochondria's dysfunction itself. The dopamine production goes down as mitochondrial function goes down over time. And the accumulation of this production of destructive oxidative stress is what causes the progressive disease, and it's due to the mitochondrial dysfunction. What I like to try and do with my patients while they're on their medications for Parkinson's, I would never dream of taking a patient off of any of their medications because they're basically improving their quality of life and functioning with their medications. But I always encourage them to have what I call a nutrient-dense diet, which basically means everything you put in your mouth has a lot of nutrient value. And if you remember, when you looked at the Mediterranean diet, it is very nutrient-dense, but in and of itself, it's also got antioxidants, and it's got those monounsaturated fatty acids, which is number 2 here. You know, I have patients that literally put olive oil, you know, not just on their salads and not just in their smoothies, but they'll actually have 1 or 2 teaspoons a day because they buy really great olive oil and I love the way it tastes. You can't go wrong with eating as many avocados as you want, and coconut oil in a solid form can be basically used instead of your olive oil if you choose for some type of meal. Definitely thinking about diabetes here, reducing the diabetic condition through medication and or diet is critical if you are looking at any Parkinson's case associated as well with the diabetic condition. And then remember, we're going to regulate the production of all those powerful antioxidants in our body. Glutathione is one of the hallmark antioxidants the brain has been shown to be deficient in Parkinson's. So to me, that is an extremely important thing to always consider taking daily. And then the supplements, both through your diet as well as maybe some of your powders and your capsules, which are very dense micronutrients and antioxidant power, which literally protect your brain from progression and hopefully from the onset of Parkinson's disease at all if you have a family member or just a very proactive person when it comes to your brain health. In conclusion, there is one thing that I always recommend everybody do, my 4 pillars of health. It seems like it's an easy thing to do, and for most of us, it's extremely hard. To get an adequate and restorative night's sleep, to have a clean, nutrient-dense diet, to remain well hydrated. That's with plain water, not the water from your tea or the water from your coffee or the water from your juice or the water from your mineral drink that you're drinking before or after exercise, but plain water as much as you can get, and regularly exercising to support your total health, which includes your nervous system. So I would like to open the discussion opportunities here with any questions people might have, and we can proceed with any questions people will have at this time. Thank you very much for listening.
My doctor thinks that this kind of medicine really isn't very important and really talks it down and says that spending money on supplements is just throwing money out. I would like to try this, but how do I try this and still get along with my normal neurologist?
It's a very good question. I hear it a lot. As a matter of fact, I always recommend that the patients that I work with consider me a liaison and a consultant, because I ask that they have at least one other doctor in addition to me, and that doctor might not know anything about what I'm doing and we're talking about. So my answer to that is, first and foremost, to always remember that your health is in your hands, and that many times when physicians are not aware of something, especially if it's got value for their patient and they haven't learned about it, that they put it in a category of it's not worth it or there's no data. The problem is, in order to actually get around that, you have to remember that those people literally aren't looking for the data. They're looking for what they're doing in their practice because they're following protocol medicine, which is perfectly fine. Except if you want to actually investigate anything that's out of protocol, you have to look for the research. You have to look throughout the entire world, because unfortunately, the literature on anything that has to do with complementing medication will normally come from other countries. And for the most part, when it's done in this country, it's not necessarily done with what I would consider superior resources, meaning the coenzyme Q they're looking at might not be very good, or the glutathione they're looking at might not be very good. So in answer to your question, it's important to realize that these people are important to you, but you're in charge of your own health. And if you choose to do something that they don't understand and they verbalize it in a negative way, it normally is what I would consider sort of a backing out of saying, well, I don't understand how that's going to help you. Because they don't understand how it's going to help you. But it comes out like, oh, that's not going to help you. That's just a waste of money. And probably one of the most popular things to say, oh, you're just going to have expensive pee. So there are many, many different ways of getting around it. And I think not confronting them, which I doubt you would do, but being comfortable with the fact that they don't understand what you're doing, and you're not saying that you're not going to do what they're suggesting as well. And maybe just being at peace with the fact that they are going to be sort of in a different mindset when it comes to how you're doing or what you're doing. One of the things I get excited about is when a patient says that and then they're continuing to do well or stabilizing. The doctor's very happy with the way they're doing, and they're acknowledging that the person is still on these things that they don't understand how they work. There's a possibility that that physician might view those things as helping. It's sort of like a little bit of a gateway to opportunity for them to look at literature outside of the box, which is not very far from your fingertips. I hope that answered your question.
It does. I see that it says you are an MD. Does that mean you've gone to regular medical school as well as doing all this other stuff?
Yes, and that's a fun story. I actually did go to Eastern Virginia Medical School in Norfolk, Virginia, and then I did my residency in family medicine up at Maine Medical Center. I've been board certified in family medicine since, and ultimately my training that I have in integrative medicine came alongside my medical training. So I've done it from the beginning. I was fortunate to have a master's in biology and a BS in biology prior to going to medical school, which enabled me to go to medical school and do this integrative medical education at the same time and bring it together from the beginning, which I have to say really has been a godsend, because I didn't have to unlearn anything. I just got to learn it all at the same time.
So where do you get these supplements that you are recommending? You know, the NRF2 activator.
So I just want to let everyone know that Dr. Komeda is not available today to answer your questions, but I'm going to share with you her contact information. Here it's listed on the screen. Her email is also in the chat, and you can feel free to copy and paste the email from the chat and send her an email directly with your questions.
And so my name is Christopher Davis. I was diagnosed with Parkinson's a little less than 2 years ago. I discovered the MAPS Rock Steady Boxing program about a year after that through my wife, who met Coach Patty Wessels while they were volunteering together one day at a MAPS Parkinson's community awareness event. And when my wife got home from the event, she said, definitely call Patty. She's a physical therapist who has an excellent knowledge of Parkinson's, and that exercise program that you've been wanting to put together, she could really help you with. And I had wanted to put together some kind of exercise regime, because I could feel the symptoms slowly developing, and I wanted to do something about it. And Lynn also mentioned, by the way, that Patty was coaching this program for MAPS. And a word about my impression. Rock Steady Boxing sounded really intriguing to me. It sounded totally counterintuitive, for Parkinson's people to be beating up, anybody. And, very proactive and engaging. And so it always sounded cool, but I hadn't done anything to pursue what to do, how to find out more about it. And so I made an appointment with Patty at Mind Body Physical Therapy, and she gave me some great ideas for my exercise program. But she also evaluated me in terms of Parkinson's, which no one had ever done. Yeah, I'd had a few neurologist appointments. They were usually fairly short. I had 2, I think, in my 2 years. But Patty evaluated where I was at in terms of strength, balance, cognitive. She gave me cognitive riddles to like counting backward by 6 from 100 while I was walking back and forth with a full glass of water and trying not to spill any drops. She signed me up for the next Rock Steady Boxing class. And actually, after our appointment, I honestly felt I met someone who really understood the disease and what to do about it. And it was great to have an idea of what to do going forward.